Hi, I'm Christy, and this is Conversations with Clients, where we chat about things that have come up in session in hopes that they might be helpful to you as well. So today's chat was with a client who is having a really rough time. There's just a lot going on, and it was really activating a lot of stuff inside. And at some point, it felt really important to sort of ground our conversation in what was going on inside, how her nervous system was responding to the shitstorm that was going on outside, which led us to mapping her nervous system response and her window of tolerance, which is what we're going to chat about today. Now, if you were actually in my office, we would draw this out because it's really helpful to have a visual. I don't know if I can do that on YouTube. I'm gonna try, and if I succeed, hopefully it will appear somewhere. And if I don't, you'll have to use your imagination. So, just like everything biological, our nervous system has an ideal climate, a sweet spot where it thrives, a Goldilocks zone, which is our window of tolerance. Inside our window of tolerance, conditions are just right and everything is functioning optimally. So our bodies tend to feel at ease, grounded, centered. Emotionally, we may feel, pretty calm, curious, connected, engaged. Mentally, like we're thinking clearly, we can focus, we can concentrate. Everything is going well. And inside our window of tolerance, our system is really primed to engage and connect with the world around us and with other people. And inside the window of tolerance, all the levels of our brain, if you remember Dan Siegel's hand model of the brain, our frontal cortex, our amygdala, our limbic system, our basal ganglia, and our brainstem, all of them are functioning well, they're online, and that really enables us to be creative, to be in flow, to think strategically, to problem solve, all of those like really positive functions that our systems are kind of amazingly able to do are all available to us when we're inside the window of tolerance, when things are just right. Now, if that's just right, above our window of tolerance is hyperarousal, and here things are too hot. The essence of this is really feeling too much. So body-wise, we may feel tight or activated or agitated, restless. There's a lot of energy in our physical system. Emotionally, we may feel panicked, overwhelmed, enraged. Mentally, we may have a lot of racing thoughts. It may be very hard to concentrate or to focus. And that's because when we're in hyperarousal, our system is primed to mobilize. It's primed for action. This is where we're supposed to be if there's a threat to our physical safety. If there's a lion or a tiger or a car barreling down at us, we're not supposed to be kind of relaxed and chill. Our nervous system should be activated and mobilized for action, usually fight or flight, right? Our minds should not be concentrated and focused. They should be scanning the world for threats and exit strategies, right? So when we're in hyperarousal, parts of our brain, particularly our frontal cortex, actually start to go offline. We joke sometimes about flipping your lid, right? Our frontal cortex starts to take a back seat, and we're really being driven by those deep centers of our brain, which do a lot of our survival functions like fight or flight. So we have too hot, just right, and then down below, hypoarousal is too cold. The essence of this is almost like feeling too little. This is where our systems actually are starting to disconnect and numb out. So body-wise, we might feel very drained or heavy. We might feel like really sluggish. Emotionally, we tend to feel very flat, depressed, hopeless. Mentally also might be quite sluggish, like we kind of feel maybe a little bit zoned out or dazed or spacey. It's really hard to think clearly. And that's because here our system is primed for immobilization. We are primed to shut down and withdraw. Biologically speaking, like this is where we're supposed to be if the lion has us around the neck, right? If our nervous system perceives a situation as hopeless or as, like there's no way out, then it floods us with natural painkillers and neurochemicals that shut the system down, that numb and disconnect from the distress that's happening. And same thing, down in hypoarousal, our frontal cortex also tends to get dulled and goes sort of offline, gets kind of shut down. And once again, we're really operating primarily from those deep centers of our brain. So, in an ideal world, in a natural world, we would live 99% of our lives inside the window of tolerance, and we would be triggered into hyper or hypoarousal for the 3 minutes before we either escape death or don't escape death. Most of us, though, find ourselves outside of the window of tolerance a lot more frequently than that. And, that's largely because we don't live in a natural world, right? We live in a very different world than our systems were designed for. And when we have these sort of survival responses that were built for life on the savannah, where threats were infrequent and fleeting, when we have those operating in the modern world, where threats are persistent and chronic, it's a recipe for disaster. Chronic stress, chronically being triggered into hyperarousal or hypoarousal, teaches our nervous system that the world isn't safe, right? If we're supposed to go into hyperarousal when there are threats, chronically being triggered there teaches our system that the world is not safe. And so actually our system adapts by narrowing our window of tolerance, which is actually really smart if you think about it, because if I live in an unsafe world, then having a really narrow window of tolerance, being easily activated into hyperarousal, on a hair trigger, being ready to mobilize and act, is really smart. It's adaptive. That's probably going to be the safest strategy. Having a really wide window of tolerance, being super chill in an unsafe world, is not the way to make it to the next day, right? So our modern world can result in this narrowing of the window of tolerance, and even worse, if our nervous system is learning that the world is unsafe, then actually sometimes even being in the window of tolerance doesn't seem safe, right? Because sometimes that's where I was caught off guard. That's where the rug was ripped out from under me. That's where I was vulnerable. And so our nervous system not only narrows our window of tolerance, sometimes it actively tries to keep us out of the window of tolerance, tries to keep us mobilized and ready, right? We see this a lot with people who really struggle to be calm, to come down, to relax, to let go. People who are always needing to be busy, to be going, right? It's often a symptom of their nervous system really trying to mobilize, trying to keep them out of the window of tolerance, because it's learned that that's not a safe place to be, right? So both of those things, the narrowing of the window of tolerance and the almost avoidance of being in the window of tolerance, can lead us to just penduluming between hyper and hypoarousal, right? We get triggered into hyperarousal. We feel agitated and irritable and prickly and tight and on alert, and then at some point that tanks. That's unsustainable, right? It's so energy intensive to be in hyperarousal that at some point our system burns out, and then we tank into hypoarousal, and maybe we feel numb and disconnected and shut down and just don't care, there's no point, right? And we can find ourselves in these chronic patterns of just penduluming between hyper and hypoarousal. So why is this important? Well, I guess based on everything I've said, it's probably not a surprise that living our best life, thriving, is really dependent to some extent on our window of tolerance and on how wide our window of tolerance is and how okay it is to exist within the window of tolerance. And if chronic stress and trauma and different influences have actually narrowed our window of tolerance, then it's really important in therapy or in whatever we're doing to sort of have as a goal to widen the window of tolerance, to use nervous system strategies that expand our window of tolerance, to give people nervous system regulation tools that help them come back into the window of tolerance if they've been triggered out of it, right? And then, the second really important thing is that good therapy, or not even therapy necessarily, but good growth happens along the edges of the window of tolerance. If we are completely inside the window of tolerance, we're probably not getting to the stuff that we need to. On the flip side, though, if we are being triggered out of our window of tolerance into hyper or hypoarousal, that's not therapeutic. Remember, parts of our brain are offline when we're in hyper and hypoarousal, right? So those parts of our brain aren't learning anything from that. And in fact, what the other parts of our brain are learning is that the world is not safe. That feedback that this isn't okay, therapy is not safe, this material that we're talking about isn't safe. Our system is learning, or it's reinforcing that belief that things aren't safe, and that just almost perpetuates that narrowing of the window of tolerance. So there's a little bit of a PSA in there because, most of the clients that I see, I am not their first therapist. Most of the time, most of my clients have seen other therapists before me, and they're coming to me because something hasn't shifted the way that they hope it would. And I can usually attribute that to one of two things. And one of those is therapies that haven't been respectful of or driven by the window of tolerance, therapies that have either, kept them completely inside their window of tolerance and not nudged the needle in any way, or more often and more detrimentally, therapies that have triggered them into hyperarousal or hypoarousal, that have triggered their defensive mechanisms and put their systems into states of lack of safety. And so if you have a hangover after therapy or after any personal growth work, it's probably a sign that we want to step back a little bit. We want to be curious about where is that triggering, what is that activating, and is it where it needs to be for the system to actually learn and grow. So I hope that was helpful. I think understanding our window of tolerance and even sort of starting to map out our own window of tolerance, how often we are in hyperarousal or hypoarousal, how often we are inside of our window of tolerance, is such an important exercise because it really gives a lot of insight into what needs to happen, right? Do we need things that regulate? Do we need to expand our window of tolerance? Do we need to build safety within our system to even be inside the window of tolerance, right? It's such a helpful metric to then guide what needs to happen next. So hope that was helpful. If you have questions, I'd love to hear them. I may have answers, I may not, but I'll try. So put them in the comment section below. I would love to hear from you. Take care.